I want to talk about a much maligned movie from 2012 that, in my opinion, deserves far better recognition. The Words is a romantic drama written by Brian Klugman and Lee Sternthal in what was also their directorial debut. The film stars Rocket Racoon voice artist Bradley Cooper alongside the stunning Zoe Saldana, the not-so-stunning Dennis Quaid, the stunning when she's not talking Olivia Wilde, the boyish Ben Barnes, and the brilliant Jeremy Irons as the old man who wrote the post-World War II book that sets off the story. In 3 separate stories, the film follows the life of a contemporary author who stole the old man's book. Ben Barnes plays a younger version of Jeremy Irons in a story set in France during the end of the war and the years afterwards. He falls in love with local waitress Celia, and he soon returns to Paris to be with her after being sent back to the US after the war. The couple get married and have a baby girl, who suddenly falls ill and dies soon afterwards. The trauma nearly splits the couple apart, and Celia goes to live with her mother in the country while the young man stays in Paris and drowns his sorrows. Over a crazy 2-week period, the words pour out of him, and he completes a manuscript about his life and experiences that he takes to Celia in the country to read. However, on her return to Paris to give their relationship another go, she accidentally leaves the book in a briefcase on the train. The mayor. The young man loses his mind, and he can't forgive Celia for a long while. On top of the loss of their daughter, they split up and divorce a short time later. The young man returns to the US to live out a mundane life and eventually turn into Jeremy Irons in aging makeup. Meanwhile, the story of what happened to the manuscript is told in 2 stories led by Rocket Racoon and Dennis Quaid. Now just quickly on Dennis Quaid, because I think his casting is one of the film's few weak points, but then I happen to think that of most movies he's cast in, I'm always left wondering, why? He has a very distracting face, I find. It's that nose. It utterly fascinates me. Plus he's so unemotive, as best explained by Saxondale.
I'd like you all to try and think of words that make you feel neither happy nor sad. Words that elicit no response, that are emotionally neutral.
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid?
Yeah.
No, that is good. That is good.
The film opens with Quaid as successful author Clay Hammond in what is the present-day real world in these 3 stories. He presents a book reading of his latest novel at a posh venue. The book is about the fictional character Rory Jansen, played by the Rocket Racoon voice artist, but really it's all about him, as you'll gather as the film paces along nicely. Rocket is an aspiring writer who lives in New York with his gorgeous girlfriend Dora, played by Zoe Saldana. After several years of Rocket trying to get a book deal and just about getting by in a small apartment, they travel to Paris to get married as a happy pair of paupers. Dora buys Rocket an old briefcase in an antique store, and they return to America where his book is rejected again. Needless to say, Rocket rummages through the briefcase one day and happens across an old manuscript, a masterfully scribed manuscript, written of course by the young man. Moved to tears by the story, Rocket decides to type out the manuscript on his laptop without changing a word or mistake, just for inspiration, to feel the words flow through his fingers. Dora happens across the story on Rocket's laptop and is equally moved, but believing her husband wrote it. She pressures Rocket Racoon into submitting the book to a publisher he works for. Several months pass and the publisher reads it, of course loves it, and whacks it out into the shops. It's a huge hit, Rocket is famous. However, he's also tortured by the truth, and it isn't long before the old man learns of this hit new book, The Window Tears, and realises it's his old manuscript. Jeremy Irons confronts Rocket Racoon in Central Park, and in a brilliantly played out scene, makes it known that he's the original author, and he's far from impressed. Guilt plays on Rocket's mind and he spills the beans to Dora while drunk one night. He also visits his publisher to tell him the truth, and to ask for the old man to be credited as the sole author. The publisher points out that it would destroy both their reputations, so don't be an idiot. Instead, Rocket visits the old man at his place of work to offer him a wad of cash. The old man angrily refuses the money, has a funny turn, and sits down to tell Rocket that he saw Celia one last time, long after their divorce. At a train station, he spots her standing on a platform with her husband and their young son, and their eyes meet as the now middle-aged man's train slowly pulls away. The old man then advises Rory to move on from his mistakes. Now, Dennis Quaid's scenes start the film's 3 acts and are set in the real world. Quaid also serves as the film's narrator. Through a flirty conversation with Olivia Wilde, a student and aspiring writer who comes onto him at the book reading, it's heavily implied that Quaid's character is basically Rocket Racoon. Quaid apparently stole his first book from an old man and passed it off as his own, going on to enjoy huge success while struggling with the truth, which, like his Rocket and Dora characters, caused him to split with his long-term partner. Quaid also tells Olivia Wilde that the old man died shortly after Rocket visited him at the nursery, taking a secret of the book's origin with him to his grave. The film then flashes back to Rocket and Dora in their tiny New York kitchen as he whispers in her ear,
I'm sorry.
"You know what, there's something about this film that proper tugs on my heartstrings, making him twang like Jimi Hendrix playing Star Spangled Banner. It's well directed by the film's writers, and the music by Marcelo Zarvos is just stunning, complementing every scene and story switch. Meanwhile, the chemistry between Bradley Cooper and Zoe Saldana is simply sizzling. It's no surprise they reportedly got it on during the filming, enjoying a year-long romance before splitting. At the time of its release, The Words was accused of being similar to the 2004 novel by Swiss author Martin Suter, Lila Lila, which was made into the German film of the same name in 2009. The storyline of both films are similar because they're apparently based on the real-life event of Ernest Hemingway losing several stories in a briefcase on a train. However, Lila Lila has a very different tone as a romantic comedy, and Brian Klugman and Lee Sternthal had started working on The Words back in 1999. They even attended a 2000 Sundance Screenwriters Lab with their original screenplay, 4 years before Lila Lila was published. Now, the film was roundly slammed at the time of its release, and it's been largely forgotten since. One reviewer said, "It's a well-acted but narratively limp indie that's undermined by a failure to connect emotionally with its audience. Nonsense, moves me to tears every single time." It was made on a budget of $6 million and grossed around $16.4 million at the box office. After marketing etc, they probably covered their costs with a few dollars left over to pop in a can, so nothing spectacular. But did they make a masterpiece that was lost among the initial excitement of a growing Marvel universe in the early 2010s? Did a deserved classic get blasted into space as audiences shifted to all-out CGI action hero flicks? Given the current climate, if you've noticed, we've stopped seeing beautiful tales of boy meets girl and rom-coms that once offered light relief to the action blockbusters of their day. And I find it sad that The Words failed to make a mark at a time when divisive identity politics wasn't a thing yet. And even sadder knowing it probably never will, nor will we see too many films like it in the coming years. So if you haven't seen it, give it a try. That's all, mugs.